Hello everybody, it's Daniel Benting here, and today we're going to be doing a quick tip tutorial for Blender. Today I'll show you how to actually render a sphere or a 360-degree image. And this can be useful for if you're trying to render out a 360-degree scene or a world shader that you've made, or if you're trying to render the shader of a sphere. I know I actually did this for my Planet Destruction asset pack that I have on my Gumroad, where I actually had to bake the texture maps for the planet. And I basically did that by putting a camera in the center of the planet sphere and rendering out a 360-degree image so that I could basically get all my maps for the shader on the planet. So I'll be showing you that today. So let's get right in. Now we've got my simple scene here. If I go into render view with Z rendered, you can see I've got a 360-degree HDRI applied to my world shader. So I'll open up the shaders tab just by splitting my window and going into shader editor. Set it from object to world, and you can see that image set up there in this environment texture node. And an important setting is with a 360-degree image, you need to set it to equi rectangular. And then I've got my mapping with no different settings, it's just default. And then my texture coordinate is generated, and that's all you need. So that's my environment. And then if I wanted to actually render this out just as a demonstration, I'll actually get a camera, because that's what we need first to render. So I've added that in, it's popped in the center of our scene here, but it also by default has a set rotation, which we don't want. So we want to go to the object properties, which is this orange tab here. And by default it's got all these rotations. We want to zero that out to begin with. Zero, there we go. And you'll notice it's facing down. Now that isn't quite what we want, but we'll come back to these transforms later. So now we want to go to the camera tab right here, and we want to change it from perspective to panoramic. There we go. By default it's set to fisheye equisolid. We want to change it to equi-rectangular. There we go, that'll produce the best result. And by default the lat is -90 to 90, and the longitude is -180 to 180. And that's what we need, because basically the -180 to 180 is going to create a 360-degree circle. And if I look around, it just creates a full circle, and then the 90 degrees latitude allows us to look up and down along each axis of rotation. And that creates a sphere basically. So those defaults are fine. But now that we've actually got that set as equi-rectangular, we can press 0 on the numpad to go to our camera view. And we'll just go into render view for the moment. And you'll see it's starting to look like a 360-degree image. Another thing we need to do is make sure we change our resolution. So basically we go to the output properties, and you see I've already set it here. But what you want to do is have the X resolution at twice the value of your Y. So you can see I've got 2048 as my X, and then I've got 1024, which is half that, as my Y. Now you can have it as any value. You could have it as 3000 on the Y and 6000 on the X if you want a really large image, as long as the X is twice what the Y is. There we go. And we'll go back to our camera settings. You'll see that our actual image is, while it looks 360 and it would produce a 360-degree image, it's not really rotated the right way. As you can see, we're sort of looking down at the floor, and then we're seeing the rest of the view on the outside of the image. But because the center is basically the thing that you're looking at, and you can see we're looking at the floor or the tiles of this room environment. So to change that, we've got to go back to our object properties, and this is where our transforms come back in. So we want to set our rotation and change the X to 90. There we go. And that's basically made our camera move across the Y-axis. So before, when it was at 0, it was sort of facing down. And that's why it was looking at the floor of our environment. But now that it's at 90, it's sort of facing forward, which is great. And another thing is we actually need to set the Z rotation to -90. And the reason for this is if I actually bring up the original image, so this is the original HDRI image that I've got on my world shader, and you can see this is what the image looks like. And you can see that in Blender, that's also how our image looks, because I've set the rotation to -90, whereas at 0, the rotation is sort of incorrect. It's not at the right spot. It still works, but to keep it the same, you just need to rotate the Z by -90. That way you get the same result. But yeah, and now we've got an identical look to the original image. And if you were to render that out, you'd have this 360-degree image, which you can apply to your world shader or to a sphere, or whatever you're looking to use the 360-degree image for. And of course, it's important to remember, if it's going to be a HDRI, which is used for lighting because of its high bit depth, you obviously need a high bit depth image format to save as. So if we go to output, we want to set it to something like EXR or HDR right here, which have 32-bit formats. And then yeah, you'd just press F12 to render that, and you'd get the result and you'd save it out. Alright, so I'll quickly just set it to the format that I want. Go with Radiance HDR, and I'll press F12 to render out our image. And there we go, it's quickly done that in our render window. There's the image, and I can just save that out where I want. So image, save as, and I'll just save it to the desktop. Let's go with room HDR.hdr. Alright, and that has been saved. So I can now open that image in GIMP, drag it in from the desktop, and there it is. That's our image saved out as a 360-degree, and we'd be able to open that in Blender as well, the same as the original image. Alright, so that's basically how you would get any scene or procedural world shader and render that into a 360-degree image. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to see how to render a full material on a sphere as a 360-degree set of images, then be sure to watch the next video in this series. Alright, see ya.